I'm your host, Donna Cates, and each week we'll dive into powerful stories, expert strategies, and practical tools to help you take charge of your financial future. Whether you're planning for retirement, navigating a divorce, or simply looking to build your wealth with confidence, this is your space to grow, learn, and thrive. Let's get started with today's podcast. Hello, everybody. I'm excited to introduce you to Janice Thompson, who owns 514 Equity Group out of Texas. Thanks for joining us today. I'm eager to delve into your career journey now. So, Janice, if you would introduce yourself and give us that 90-second overview of what it is that you do and why you got into it, please.
Absolutely. Well, Donna, I'm just thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So my career journey, it started off in finance, investment banking, Wall Street, and then went through, spent time working in corporate, in strategy, doing mergers, acquisitions work there. And then also spent time doing consulting with some private equity, lower middle market buyout firms, both as a kind of a deal consultant, doing diligence for them, working with some portfolio companies on growing their business. And then also pivoted into a part of the management team of a portfolio company. So I love this kind of deal making growth strategy space. Um, what I found over the years is, when you look at who's playing in that space, there aren't a ton of people who look like me and you who are in that space. And when you think about the amount of wealth that is just kind of awash in the whole private equity space, I think I saw some numbers recently where just in terms of assets under management, there's almost like 3.77, or I'll call it $4 trillion worth of assets under management in the firms, and only 6% of that is controlled by us, by women and minorities. Um, that we can do better. It's so I came out of a role where I was in a corporate strategy role, partner with a colleague of mine, and we decided, we're just going to start something where we're going to do better. And so the 514 actually comes from Matthew 514, that says, "We are the light of the world, a city set on a hill that it cannot be hidden." And we really look at this as a way to, first and kind of foremost, help to close the wealth gap for underrepresented groups here in the United States. And so we do that with a couple of different kind of platforms or ways. First, it's about education and awareness. I've had so many conversations with people, it might be people of color or women, and these are not people who, just, the GED or whatever. These are, MBAs, et cetera, who don't realize that there's another world out there. That and not to say that this world is for everyone, but at least we ought to be aware that it exists, and then we can make an educated decision as to whether or not it's for us. And so we set about to just kind of make people aware that, you can have a great career in corporate, and that's fine, but for those of us who like to do more and are looking to build kind of that generational wealth, you might think about participating in this private equity space in terms of actually buying a business. And oftentimes when we think about becoming an entrepreneur, we think about startups, right? I get a napkin, an idea on a sheet of paper, and I go to pitch a venture capital. Um, yeah, that's all well and good, and some of those make it, and it's a very small percentage of those that make it. Um, but there is about $9 trillion worth of businesses, like we call it the silver tsunami, which is what we're really focused on, that will change hands between, and it's we're already in the midst of it. So with another, let's call it between 8 to 10 years, where people who are ages 61 and over are retiring.
Mhm.
They own these middle market businesses. So we think about them as the boomers, the silent generation. Their children are millennials. And not all of those kids want to take over mom and dad's business. And so there needs to be this exit strategy. So, that whole, it's just a question of the population. So that's what we're focused on, helping people understand that there is an opportunity, even if you've run into kind of the glass ceiling at your corporation, you've been restructured or reorged out of your business. There's a way to tap into that. So that's what we do, education, and then the financing piece to provide that kind of holistic solution for, okay, now you've got the idea, now you go through this training program, now you're ready to go out and actually acquire a business, and we partner all along the way. So that's kind of what we do.
I'm going to tell you, you're in my wheelhouse. So that resonated with me on so many levels, and I'm just going to quickly kind of share a couple. Number one, we are so still in the minority, being women and African American in this world. I mean, that's
Yes.
just the reality. And I know when I started in this business, and I've been in the financial industry for over 25 years, there might have been 7% of the financial advisors that represented only that small part. I think we might be up to 27% now, but that's still kind of shameful for me. I mean, to me. So I really appreciate what you're doing and how you're focusing on educating these people who are like me and you, and we're normal. I mean, there's nothing wrong with us. We're smart, we're brilliant, we can run businesses, we have degrees and all the things, but we just haven't reached out and grabbed the brass horn yet. So thank you for the
Exactly,
work you're doing.
exactly.
Right.
And
So,
I have talked to people who actually are in business and don't ever think of acquiring another business as a way to 3x, 4x, 5x their current holdings. Organic growth is great, but when there's an opportunity to maybe slightly diversify and then go from this to this level, you take those giant leaps. And you can't do that without a lot of support, right? You need a team that's there, that's been there, done that, can step you through the process, help you understand what it means to go from growing organically a business to acquiring another business, folding that in and making the two successful. There's a lot of pitfalls that people can easily, but we have to think about that as an option.
and
And
that's what your
oftentimes we just
company is
don't.
doing. You're actually working with people to help them. You're part of their team. And
Right, right. And so, as part of, for instance, like in a couple months or so, I will literally be going to a business school as part of like an executive program. All business owners, they happen to all be, kind of probably minority women-owned businesses in this class, but talking to them about growth through acquisition. It's how do you do that? How do you think about that? Who are the players you need to have at the table? What do you need to do in the base business, even before you start to think about it? If your goal is, I want to grow my business 10%, then just do it organically. You have to be of the mindset that it has to be worth your while, because it's not going to be a quick undertaking. It's not going to be easy. um, you've got to find the right business that fits, et cetera, et cetera. And so you've got to be of that massive growth kind of mindset for this to really to make sense. But we should all think about it, right?
yeah, and I agree with that. And I'm going to tell you, I'm at the tail end of my career, not getting ready to hang up the pull the retirement plug yet, but closer to that than getting started. So that, succession planning and having somebody to buy my practice and all, that's definitely front of mind. And sounds like your wheelhouse. So I'm glad to know you. I'm tickled to death.
Right, right.
So we've already addressed a couple of problems, and it's just the primary one is that there are so few minorities that work in this financial industry. But tell me, what do you see as the biggest problems right now in the industry, and what are you doing beyond what you've already talked about to resolve that?
So there's a couple things that I see. One, and I think the industry started to go through um, kind of a little bit of a restructuring from the standpoint of how we even approach the whole buyout space. So private equity has gotten kind of a bad rap, and in some cases, deservedly, for going in, buying, slashing, selling, it really financial engineering growth, as opposed to really thinking about how to grow the business, make an investment in the community, in the talent in the communities in which we operate. um, but the spike in interest rates has encouraged a different type of behavior,
Mm.
because debt wasn't as easy to come by. When interest rates are really low and debt is really easy to come by, it's easy just to go in and use a lot of leverage on the balance sheet, buy a business, do some fundamental cost cutting in order to grow. So you're growing the cash flow through cost cutting, but you're not fundamentally investing in really what is going to take that business to the next level. And so with the higher interest rates, there's been a refocus or a focus on operationally, what do we need to do to grow this business? Banks are not as loose with the cash and the credit. Now, some of that is starting to ease up a little bit again, but I don't think it's going to ever go back to where we were, let's call it 10, 15 years ago,
Mhm.
where money was just kind of flowing, bank money was flowing freely and everybody could do I put in 10% equity and 90% debt, and and I go off and that's how I buy companies. So it's forced a more conservative capital structure, which means that people like myself who have a combination of finance as well as being operators, we do better in those environments because we were not intrinsically just relying on a balance sheet and financial engineering to create returns on the investment. It was about what is your people strategy, your growth strategy, yes, cash flow strategy, your operation. It was about the business and really taking a good asset and making it a great asset. And it takes a little bit longer to do that. You can go in and slash and burn, and then you buy a pig, put lipstick on a pig, and sell a pig, 2.5 years. But it takes more time to go in and understand, do I have the right people, the right seats, the right talent? Um, what is my strategy for growth? Do I have the capabilities that I need? And then do I have the cash flow, to execute against that? It's a more holistic way of growing the business. So I think that's what we're seeing more of, and you'll see more firms with plans around growing the business as opposed to just quick exits, because hold times are longer. IPO market hasn't been there. The merger market has, with interest rates, there's not as much going on. So firms have been forced to hold their assets a little bit longer.
All interesting and keeps you busy, I'm sure. So,
Yes, never.
where do you see the industry going in the next 5 to 10 years, especially in the light of so many people retiring from our industry?
I there's the deal flow, especially, and so I will bifurcate the market. So where I think there's going to be an increase in deal flow is not necessarily in a lot of the what I would call mega. You're not going to see it, all of a sudden, 35, 40% increase in, let's say, call it 500 million and above. But where this retirement, this what I call this silver tsunami, that's in the lower middle market. So you will have, and there are certain industries where you have where the boomers and the silent generation have hold more assets, or certain types of businesses. So you think of the construction, your tech services, to a certain extent some of the healthcare. Those are when you look at the dispersion of the businesses that are owned by the 61 plus, that's where you see the big chunks in the marketplace. So I think you're going to see more people looking to sell those types of businesses. So, the buyout firms that are in this kind of lower echelon of that upper middle market, I think you're going to see more of them coming down lower because there's going to be more deal flow available. But I also think that creates a great opportunity for individuals to go in and start to buy out some of those smaller businesses. When I say smaller, we're talking maybe revenue size, maybe 5 million, 10, 15 million. Those are smaller and below businesses.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, I'm going to shift gears on you for a second, if I may. What's the biggest challenge that you faced, either personally or professionally, to this point in your life, and how has that shaped how you do business?
It's a good question. So, um, I would have to say the scarcity mentality, especially amongst women. And here's what I mean by that. Some of my worst interviews, and I'll give you a couple of examples, have been sitting across the table from another woman.
Mm.
So for instance, I literally had a woman, I was interviewing for like a corporate development, so a lot of M&A work, fairly large company. And she literally stopped me in the middle of the interview and she said, "I'm surprised you speak in complete sentences." So, and then I had another interview, like a corporate strategy, and I had to interview with the chief people officer of the company, another fairly large company. And one of the first things that she said to me was, "We don't have an affirmative action policy." I thought, well, okay, but what does that have to do
How is
with
that relevant to the conversation?
how is that relevant to this conversation?
Mhm.
Or I've been in situations where this happened a couple of years ago. I was in New York. I was at a law firm, very large law firm, had invited a number of emerging managers to meet with prospective LPs. And so we were doing the networking in the room, and I was talking to a fellow emerging manager. And this person made the comment that, well, we shouldn't talk to each other too much because, we're all competing for the same dollar. I'm thinking there's trillions of dollars out here. We're not competing. There's more than enough. It's so too often I think we feel like there's only one seat at the table. And if I help you, then I'm going to be moved out because there's not going to be two of us. So this inherent competition or insecurity, especially when it comes to women reaching out, and it's getting better. But when I first started off, and this is not my first rodeo, so the number of women in finance has certainly increased, but still we're not by any stretch of the imagination, as you shared earlier. The percentages aren't representative of our percentage in the overall population.
Right, right.
And I think we just feel like, and that has really shaped what I'm trying to do today. It's like, look, there's more than enough. I've been around too much money. There's too many opportunity. We just need to, like you said, grab the bull by the horn and take it, and not feel like if I reach out to another woman, or if I reach out and help another person of color, then that means that there's less for me. It means that we're trying to break and bring equity to this whole playing field. That's what we're doing.
And it's so empowering to hear you say that because I think so many of us have that mindset if there's not enough to go around. But I've always felt that the more you give, the more you receive. And it may come
Yes,
from that person that you gave to, it may come from somebody you've never met before, but there is definitely plenty of everything to go around the table.
right, right,
And that
exactly.
having that mindset can be very empowering. All right. Well, tell me this. If you could have lunch with any person, living or deceased, who would that be and why?
I only get one.
Well, you're not the first to say that. So I'm going to say, just in lieu of time, we're going to
Yes,
narrow
one
it to
one
one.
person. Who someone who I would it would be fascinating just to talk to her. Madam C.J. Walker. One, it's like, she became a millionaire back when it was really, really, really hard
Mhm.
for women and for Black women. So how you go about, just the strength and the perseverance to, be in it, and, to go and do something that had never been done before. Um, in a time frame, and it's one thing to do it, maybe in the 50s. It's another thing to do it in the 60s, 70s, 80s. No, this was way, in another century. you know
Right.
and so, I think it would be just fascinating, given kind of some of the challenges that we have in society today. Some of the in some instances, we're still there.
Yeah.
And so, just to pick her brain, just to, just to understand what gave you the courage, not only to start, but to continue, because we all know that there were obstacles. There were, probably, even things that we wouldn't even imagine that she had to endure. Um, yeah, I just think she would be a fascinating person to
Well, and
to
I'm
interview.
actually expanding my list of people to do research on from doing these podcast interviews, learning about people that I haven't even been exposed to. So thank you for that. Well, and I would love to ask you to share with our audience if they would be interested in working with you, learning more about what you have to offer. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so if they're contemplating, maybe this has sparked some curiosity around, maybe I'd like to acquire a business. If they go to our website, which is 514equitygroup.com, there is a tab that says recruiting. And on that page, there's information, and then there's a form just to fill out to indicate that they're interested, because we have an entire process. We've got content that we put people through, to really make sure that they are equipped to go on this journey to acquire a business. So that's one way. If you're, interested in just, connecting with me, and, learning more about, how you can get involved or whatever, I would say reaching out, you know connecting with me on LinkedIn, and just
Mhm.
dropping in the name of this, the podcast, so I know where the connection request is coming from. That's always a good way to reach me.
Fabulous. And I'm pretty confident that's how we met is through LinkedIn as well.
Yes, yes, through LinkedIn.
Okay,
Yes, it
so
does work.
It does work. It does work. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. We appreciate it. And I know our audience is going to enjoy it too.
Well, thanks, Donna. I appreciate it. And it was great getting acquainted with you.
Yes, thank you. I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, informed, and ready to take the next step in your financial journey. Remember, building wealth isn't just about money, it's also about creating a life that aligns with your goals and values. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the women in your life who deserve financial empowerment too. Until next time, stay confident, stay empowered, and keep building the life you desire.